Okay, so as promised from yesterday, we are going to take a quick look at, in this video, the different Jameses. Um, how do I put this kindly? There are three. There's James the Greater, who was the saint of the day that we discussed yesterday. Now, James the Greater is the one who was at the Transfiguration. He was the one who was with Jesus and witnessed several of the events that the other saints hadn't. And is a close brother, a close relative of Jesus. He is a cousin of Jesus and is the brother of Saint John, the evangelist, or as we know him, Saint John the apostle. Okay, so that takes care of who yesterday's saint was. Now, James the Less is another of the Jameses that we have. He is also an apostle, is the brother of Saint Jude. So he's also a cousin of Jesus. Um, we know that he's a one. Yeah, like I said, we know he's also a cousin of Jesus, and this is where things get a little sketchy. I'm not gonna lie, things get kind of a lot sketchy here because we don't really have a lot of hard. Part of the problem we run into, and I'm gonna be totally honest with you here about this thing, is that we don't always have a whole lot of hard information to go on. One, you're talking 2,000 years ago, so hard information was simply not available. You didn't have birth certificates and things. Well, relatively until basically like within the last 100 years or so, you didn't really have government documents of birth. Two, you're talking about people who had a very good reason not to um, tell us who they were or to hide their identity. The reason being that they typically were being hunted by the Romans from time to time and or other Jews. So, like St. Paul was. So, you do not have people who were necessarily overly eager to um, tell us who they were. Okay, that's a pretty big preface, but let me go ahead and tell you why it all makes sense. The reason that all makes sense is because one of the other options is that James the Less is also James the Just. Now, James the Just was the Bishop of Jerusalem. He's the first bishop of Jerusalem. There's also a possibility he was a completely different guy and is a totally different James entirely. He lived until around 70 some AD and was killed, stoned to death. Alright, so there you got it. That is basically about as clear as they can make this, which is about as clear as mud, but unfortunately, again, when you have people who typically are referred to only by their first name and only, when you have three people all referred to by their first name and seldom some other identifier, it makes things somewhat complicated sometimes. So I hope that clears things up a little bit. But James the Just, not the Bishop of Jerusalem, was the first martyr among the apostles. So he was the proto-martyr of the apostles. That means first martyr of the apostles, basically. And that is, and sometime it was be sometime around the 44 AD area, we think. And yeah, that's about it for this video. I'm gonna post another Saint of the Day one, but I wanted to make sure I put this one up because, like I said, there was the now actually three different Jameses, so I wanted to make sure I got it